Hey guys, this is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales. Hope you guys are doing good. Um, Please like, share, and subscribe. We definitely appreciate that. Leave any comments. We definitely appreciate that as well. Today, I am very honored to have a interesting gentleman on the show that has amazing history. Not that we're glamorizing mob stuff or anything criminal stuff at all, but he does have an interesting life story, and we're gonna break this up in parts because it's way too much to talk about. But I'd like to welcome Jimmy DiModica to the show. Thank you, Jimmy, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to see you, and also Peter. Nice to see you guys.
Thank you very much. Just to give people a little bit of a quick breakdown. Jimmy is from Jersey. He grew up around the Crews in Jersey and New York as well. His dad had the nickname Juicy, and Jimmy's going to tell us why he got that nickname eventually. Um, he was a pretty powerful guy in Jersey, and Jimmy was under his wing for a bit, and under some other guys that we're going to talk about. And Jimmy never testified or anything like that. So to make that clear, he lived a life and then got out of it, obviously, as far as we know. So, Jimmy, first question I'd like to ask you is how did you get mixed up in this world to begin with?
Well, I was born into it, so to speak. Since I was 2 years old till I was 12 years old, my father was away. He was away 9 years. He came home when I was 12. First thing he bought me was a heavy bag because my father was a professional boxer. He won the National AAU Championship welterweight. He was New Jersey and New York Golden Glove champion. Um, I grew up because in my neighborhood, you had Bobby Cabert, who everybody knows. Bobby Cabert was very close with John Gotti. And Bobby raised me. Buddy Musagrasso, his brother Sonny, they both passed on, but they raised me all the years my father was away. And this was my life. In other words, I was always told you don't tell on your friends. Any band that I started as a kid was all from stolen instruments that Buddy Muss robbed from our neighborhood. It was from the Newark Board of Education. I remember my mother had to file off the names on the trombones and all the guitars and stuff. It says Newark Board of Ed on it. And that's how I started in my bands as a young kid. But I come from a long line of crime. But the thing is is that my dad always taught me, never, matter of fact, in sixth grade, I was like a school crossing guard type of speak. You would wear like this little white banner across your chest, and you would help cross the kids across the street. And let's say if they didn't listen to you, you had a squeal on the next day in class. My father heard that. He said, no, you're quitting that job. You're a stool pigeon. You can't work at that job. So that was my first thing. But in 1944, my father was 12 years old. That's when he went to reform school. And that's when he was introduced to the life. In other words, at 12 years old, going away for truancy in Jamesburg, which was in Jersey, the reform school at the time. My father goes in there at 12 years old in 1944. And the guy approaches him, who's an older kid, was an older teenager. And he said, I'm the Duke of the cottage. At that time, the Duke meant the toughest guy in there. He said, as Duke, he said, you're going to give me your cookies tonight. He goes, when we go to chow. And as Duke, I'm required to slap you in the face. I said, well, what happened, Dad? He says, well, by the time he said the word face, I must have punched him 900 times. They started yelling, we got a new Duke. We got a new Duke. So my father said, I realized then it was good to be the boss. So I started getting the cookies, he said. So he taught me a lesson very young, when I was young. He came home for 5 years. Then he went away again. 5 years later, he went to Atlanta prison for 6 years. Came home for 2 years, went away 8 years in Leesburg prison in Jersey, state prison. Came home for 5, then he did 17. The last 17 years that he did federal, I'd spent with him. We were in the same cell together in Otisville, upstate New York, because the judge allowed us to be together because we weren't co-defendants. He allowed us to, because we weren't part of the same trial. My father was already down 11 years. So this is why they allowed me to be with him. Because I told him it was a hardship all the time, all the years I was away from my dad. And as you understand, Nick, I'm sure you're probably a parent. You want to have that closeness with your dad, especially I had no brothers or sisters. I would have had a brother, but my mother lost it at 8 months. She had a bleeding ulcer, and the baby unfortunately passed on. She lost the baby. I would have had a brother, but I always had that. I wanted to be close to dad. So this was like a rekindling. It was good for me to be with dad, and I really enjoyed it. That was basically my infinite stages of it. And naturally, then later on, my father, when he came home after those years, maybe prior to going, this is in the 90s, he acquired local Laborers International Union of North America, which is LUNA. It was Local 342. He took over that. He was controlling that for New York for the Gambinos. And then when he went away, I took over. But it was a vacuum. In other words, real power is something you take. And I took it. In other words, my father never introduced me to nobody. He didn't say, this is my son. If I'm not here, you see him. No, he never did that. I went out and said, I'm Juicy's son. Now you're going to deal with me. And because I was a good earner and that money was flowing, I couldn't wait to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, because these union contractors, they wanted to save money. And when they want to save money, they want to go scab. They want to go non-union. So at that time, you would pay a union laborer $1,200 a week. $800 would be in his envelope, gross, and the other $400 would be in his back end, his annuity, his dues, his unemployment, his benefits, blah, blah, blah. So they were always looking to save either benefits or whatever. So they said, well, gee, can we do something? Yeah, we can do something. I'll give you one laborer. You pay him at $1,200 a week. I said, the rest will work out. So let's say a guy bid the job union. He bid the job, let's say 10 laborers. That's $12,000 a week. He's going to be there 6 months, 26 weeks. Do the math. 120,000 or whatever the case may be. I may say to him, just give me 30,000, and then you just keep the rest. That's like giving him a check for like 90,000 or whatever it was. Bang. This is the kind of mornings I would wake up to. Plus the lunch trucks had to pay me. Every yard of concrete, I got 2 yards. Every yard of concrete that was poured. The lunch trucks were great because there was one guy came on, naturally a Greek guy owned the lunch truck, and he says, well, I'm here, it's America's, this is America. I'm here for, I said, no, it doesn't work that way. I says, you're on our territory. I'll tell you, if you want to work here, I never did business with you before. You're going to pay me $3,000 down, and you're going to give me $300 a week. You got 7 stops a day. You got 600 workers. You're the only guy in town. You're the only roach coach in town. You're gonna make all the money. Therefore, I'm entitled. If you can make this much, I can make this much out of that, right? It's fair, right? He says, oh yeah, well, that's fair. Every day. So let's say you're in a territory. You got 10 jobs rolling. Now that's 10 lunch trucks. The containers, 40-yard containers of debris. Every time you would drop a container off or pick up a heavy one filled with debris to empty it, that's called a pull. I would get $25 a pull, plus so much down. So at the end of the month, we say we'll square up once a month in cash for each pull. So let's say, I say your shop steward and mine will count how many pulls it is per month. Let's say there's 100 pulls. That's 2,500. So bang, I would go to his office. I would see him. He'd pay me the money. It was such a sweet deal, Nick. It was beautiful. It was like I couldn't wait to wake up. Like I said, I couldn't wait. But then there's a price to pay for that. You see, then it's time to go to jail. You see, but I always knew I had to go away because this was part of my life. I didn't care. Jail doesn't bother me. Yeah, in a way, I'm not really that much savvy to understand that, but I didn't care because if I'm making this much money, In the legitimate world, you're not going to make that much money. Then if you put it away, but in my case, I gave it to a wife and put it in her name. And girls can rob more than 10.
You probably.
Because I only got one visit. I only got one visit in 10 years, about 7 years. And on the house in Greece, the house in Mendham, let me tell you something. Marriage is like a tornado. In the beginning, there's a lot of blowing activity, and when it's over, you lose your house.
Yeah,
That's how it is. I was married 3 times. I lost 3 houses. Go ahead, Nick. What were you saying?
No. Well, this is when you were doing all this stuff, okay, with all the union stuff. Now, you had to have been kicking up to somebody. So, which family were you kicking up to at the time?
Well, that was the Gambino family. In other words, at that time, I can say his name now because he passed on. Jackie the Nose, Jackie DiModica. He handled all the guys that were made on the Jersey side. I took care of Jackie through another guy who was there, who's still alive, who I can't say right now. Mm-hmm. But he was there. I would see him. Whatever I would give that guy. See, what happened was when I was running the union, right, Nick? Mm-hmm. In other words, I was making all the money. I would cut the money up 5 different ways. The other guy that I made business manager, which was my partner, another guy who was there, my father. I had somebody else and somebody else. So now what happens is the guy approaches me. He comes home from jail and he says to me, I'm going to be here for you. He says, I'm going to sit down for you. Whatever you need, I'm going to sit down for you because of respect for your father. He says, I don't want nothing. I says, no, you're going to still get a piece of everything I make. Henceforth, 6 months later, he calls me in. He says, I have the union now. But guess what? He goes, stay right where you're at. Then I realized that the knife was more powerful than the gun. Because when you have the knife, you're able to cut the pie. And when you cut the pie, if everybody eats, you make more friends. And this is what kept me in good graces. Because I was never tight with a buck. I was always smart. I knew. In other words, greed wasn't my motivation. Yes, greed was my motivation to earn. Like the first Christmas alone, I gave $80,000 to Jackie. Jackie got $80,000 as a gift for the first Christmas alone. That was my gift. And I was only in there 3 months. So you can just figure out what I was making.
Yeah.
Couldn't wait to wait. Like I said. Yeah.
But this was all okay. This was all the unions, right? Oh, wait, before we get to the next question, before I even go further, tell us how your dad got the name Juicy and why?
Oh, well, he was a kid. He was in a gang called on his wrist right here would say HBA, which meant Hat Blockers Association. And there's a fedora with a bat going through it with stars. He said, if I cracked 2 more guys in the head, he goes, I would have had a top hat tattooed, he says. But when he was a kid, they would make scores. Again, he's a young kid. He's in the street. This is in the 40s, 50s. And he would be shooting dice. And then let's say a number was 4. They say, hey, that's a juicy number. So that's how he got the name Juicy, from shooting dice as a young kid. It wasn't from vigorous payments.
I know some people would think that.
I know.
So he was good. So he was actually a good dice player. Now, on your end, you were a good card player.
Oh, forget about it. You go on YouTube and put my name in there, Jimmy DiModica Card Magic. You'll see just how good my hands should be dipped in platinum. Every crew, Lucchese's, and then I would run like Vegas nights you would have, let's say at an Elks Club, at an AmVets, at American Legion, they would have their own people there. So I would be, let's say, one of the blackjack dealers. But we would rob everybody. In other words, even though you're dealing out of a shoe, it's a special shoe. You got to know how to. You can see every card that's coming out. Either I give it to you or I don't. Now, let's say I deal you 12. The first 2 cards are legit. I deal you 12. Now I see a 9's ready to come out. You're ready to take a hit. A 9 would give you 21. So I deal you the second card. I don't know what the second card is. It could be a duplicate. but chances are it's really not. So let's say it's a 3. Now you have 15. You go hit me again. Now I give you the 9, just enough to break you. Like, I'll forget about it. I was when I worked with the Lucchese's, they told me, they said, Jimmy, you got to let somebody win. You're taking all the money. I says, yeah, but you don't understand. You're only giving us 40%. My father's taking half of mine. I says, I got to go for the jugular. I says, because otherwise I'm not going to make no money. I got to go for it. In other words, they didn't even cash in a red chip, a $5 chip. But I was very good. My hands were very good. I worked for Ali Boy Persico when he had his after hour club in New York. It was the Mona Me on 75th Street between York and First Avenue. I used to work for him when I was like 20 years old because he saw my prowess with cars and my dexterity. So he wanted me. And that time we dealt out of our hand. Dealing out of my hand is even worse. I'll destroy you even more. But everybody calls me Jimmy Cards. That's my first nickname.
Well, so you were, all right. So you also used to hang out at a place called the Belmont Tavern, which was a wise guy
Yes.
back in the day.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Well,
Funny story about that, Nick. I'm 16 years old, right? And at that time, he was alive then. Jimmy Palmieri, they called him Jimmy Higgins. He was the boss of the Gambinos at the time. His brother Nicky is sitting against the jukebox, against the wall, right? And there's a guy there. We're watching Nebraska on a Saturday afternoon, college football. And the guy's drunk and he's saying, pardon me, I have a little bit of analogy. And he says, he goes, what do you think about that, Joe? He's referring to Nicky. And I said, why is he calling Nicky Joe? He says, oh, yeah, you don't want to answer me, Joe? He says, well, F you, Joe. So when he said that, I went, bang. I cracked the guy, right? The guy goes down with 3 stools, starts gagging on his own blood. Another guy at the time that was alive, Jimmy Fucci, he puts $40 in my hand. He goes, kid, get out of here. He's going to call the law. We got to go clean him up in the bathroom. He goes, get out of here. I look at my hand. I see $40. I said, man, this is a good job. So I'm 16 years old. I'm saying. So that's the Belmont Tavern. That's the kind of people that were in the Belmont Tavern with me, who I was raised with. All the years my father was away. So these are the people that raised me. You know, this is the kind of upbringing I had. I didn't think there was nothing wrong with it.
So basically, being around guys like this in the Belmont Tavern and so on and forth, and your dad being away, obviously you knew who your father was. So
Sure.
Lack of a better way of saying this, ironically, even with the name Juicy, your father had some juice, obviously, because they respected you. Nobody busted your hump. They let you do business. So you were actually in good hands.
Oh, sure. In other words, nobody would bother me because they knew the wrath. My father was bad with his hands. Oh, he was devastating. My father's a legend in this part of the neighborhood. Because don't forget, when Bobby Cabert was alive, my father is the one that sponsored my father to be straightened out. So don't forget, my father's 94 years old now. So it's different now. He's more subdued. He has problems a little walking now. He's getting older, But don't forget, this was a time. This was in the heyday in the 70s when everything was flourishing. Now, when my father came home in 1980, his cellmate was Carmine Persico Jr., the boss of the Colombo family. So his son, Ali Boy, liked me. That's when I worked in his after-hour club. And let me tell you something. You ever see the big 18-wheelers that say Roma, R-O-M-A, Roma Foods? They're all over the country. They supply the pizza business with sauces, napkins, pizza boxes. That's Carmine Persico. He owned that. People don't even know that. When we were in jail, I'm in the chow hall, and the guards, this is in Otisville, federal prison, the little packets of salad dressing, right? I'm sitting with a guy, and I looked at the guy, and I slide it to him. I says, look, they don't even realize that they're buying from the wise guys. The actual federal facility was buying from Roma Foods. It says Roma on it. I laughed my head off. Like, it's so funny because He started out in the pizza box business with his son. While he was in jail, I was with Alley Boy when they cornered the pizza box business, first in the New York area, then the tri-state area, then the whole country. And they would put another four-figure in the front, let's say an ethnic guy, let's say an Israeli guy or whatever, a Jewish fellow, whatever, that wouldn't cause any heat, let's say. But we first did it with the pizza box. I would go with Alley Boy. Alley Boy would say to the pizzeria, who you getting your boxes from? He says, how much do they charge you per 100? Well, we'll charge you $20 less, plus we'll print your name on it. This is how they started out. Then it became the sauce, the mozzarella, the napkins, the plates, everything. This is how he's a criminal genius, Carmine Percy. He was a genius, this guy. I mean, his house, upstate New York, in Saugerties, I would go up there. It was 275 acres. He had like 60 horses. Oh God, like he had a racetrack where they would train thoroughbreds on it. Like you couldn't believe he had a frightening amount of wealth. This guy was a genius. I mean, like, I love Carmine. Forget about it. And one time when he came home, he wanted to see my father because my father had just come home also a little after him. So I brought him to go. I went to Alley Boy's house to see him, to see Carmen, to bring my father there. So he calls my father in the other room and he gave my father a few dollars, I guess, to get him back on his feet because he just came home. So Carmine says to my father, and in front of me, he says, Juice, he says, they already got another indictment ready to go. He says, and he was an avid smoker. He was a chain smoker. He says, but that's the life we chose. Well, what's the difference? I told my wife, don't even go down there and all that stuff. But this is how it was. In other words, I remember one time it was Labor Day weekend. I'm up the house up in Saugerties, upstate New York. And Alley Boy tells me, he goes, listen, we're having a cookout. He goes, go help my cousin Carmine get some sodas. So, you know, when you're a kid, you're figuring some sodas. You go to the refrigerator. What do you get? Like 2 6-packs? It took an hour and a half to get all the sodas out of these freezers with hand trucks. This is how long it took to get all the sodas, to pack them on ice. The wealth, God, you have no idea the wealth this man had. Unbelievable. Yeah, oh God. See, other people can write books and what it sounds. I've lived it. I've been with them. You see, this is a whole different story. And Nick, with the other solace, the other distinction is, again, I never pointed the finger at nobody and said, yeah, that's him, Your Honor. Never squealed on nobody. I did my time. My father, and let me tell you something, my father was very proud of me the way I did my time. I never embarrassed him. I never was with the wrong crowd. I never drank jailhouse hooch, homemade alcohol and got drunk. Never. I never had one infraction against me when I was there. And all our new boss was at the time, he died now, but it was Arnold Squitieri. He was our new boss at the time. Funzi was there. And a lot of other guys. But let me tell you something. You were a select few. And on Sundays, there was a guard there. He was a nice guy. He would have his thermos, but it was filled with wine. We would only get a cup, but that cup of wine was important. That was a big deal on a Sunday afternoon on the bocce court. We would have our own meal, and he would give us the wine. Because let me tell you something, what I call the illness. These guards still had the illness to be around that type of element, Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, Nick. Yeah, I tell you again, if I had to do it again, to spend the time that I did with my dad, I would do it all over again because I love being with my father. I loved it. I would do it. I would go to jail again.
Oh, shoot.
I don't care.
All right. Well, listen, one last question before we end the show and do another part eventually. Just one real quick question. How long have you been out of that life now?
Well, since I came home, it's been different because there's been a lot of changes, Nick. It's been the handwriting's on the wall. I'm being very honest. I'm being very smart. In other words, if I were to do something now, it has to be somebody that I know that's going to keep. Nowadays, I don't know who's going to say something if the guy, if he's facing 100 years, he's going to squeal. I don't know. So I'd rather just buy my time and just wait for something legitimate happens. Maybe it might be this format. It may be in a book. It may be in this. It may be in that. But I'm just hoping that something else were to break, because I feel I have a good way about expressing myself with words. You know, I'm articulate enough in writing and speaking. I figure maybe there's some calling for that, because there's still a demand for these type of stories. So I didn't
Yeah.
want to. I don't know. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to go, because I know the next time I go away, I'm going to go away for at least 20 years. It's going to be easily 20 years. You know,
No, God forbid.
God forbid. It's right.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't want to go into another tangents right now, so I want to save it
Okay.
for next time.
Oh, Dick, I got so many stories. You'll have a good time with me, pal. Believe
I
me.
know that. I can see that. That's why I want to break this up in different parts. So, Jimmy, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It was great. Listen to all these. Roughly, this is like we're not even touching the tip of the iceberg yet. I know
No,
that.
it's
So
barely, barely.
yeah. Well, this is a good thing, because with the people listening in are going to be curious for the next part, find out more information. But this is good. We're giving a little tease, which is good. Um,
Right.
yeah. So I would like to say thank you again, Jimmy, for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it. And we'll set up another part for part two, and we'll talk about other things that I have written here that I'm going to be asking you about, and we'll go to the next level.
All righty. Looking forward to it, Nick. It's so nice to meet you and Peter. Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot.
much.
No, thank you.
You guys are a class act. You're very nice guys. You're gentlemen, man. Thank you.
No, thank you as well.